During World War II, Europe suffered the organized looting of art and other valuable items by the Nazi Party of Germany. From 1933 until the end of the Second World War in 1945, Nazis plundered art and other valuable items. The Third Reich took whatever they pleased for both show and destruction. By claiming valuable items for themselves, they asserted a sort of power over world culture.
Nazis violently stole from the Jewish population as well as other groups of people. They took priceless art and artifacts and put their power on display.
Ossie Davis, a civil rights activist and American actor, once said, "Any form of art is a form of power. It has impact. It can affect change. It can not only move us, it can make us move." Art holds a value both commercially and culturally. Taking art and destroying what they deemed degenerate, Nazis showed that they had control of what was right and what was wrong in culture and in everyday life. Nazi theft and destroyed Polish art has an estimated value of $20 billion. That is 43% of Polish cultural heritage, a total of 516,000 individual pieces that were looted. One particular victim of Nazi looting was Georges Mandel, a French political leader that was particularly strong in his stance against the Third Reich. Georges Mandel, born Louis Georges Rothschild, grew up in a wealthy Jewish family and was a notable politician in the early 1900s. He was born into the Rothschild banking dynasty and grew into a conservative politician who strongly opposed all policies to the left. Conservative as Mandel was, he was equally strong in his opposition to pro-German policies, oftentimes which were conservative. In the outbreak of World War II, he became a strong resistance fighter who worked to save France from German takeover. In 1942, he was arrested and delivered to the Germans. He stayed in various concentration camps until he was transported to Paris in 1944 and shot on the orders from the French dictatorship. Before he died, a particular painting hung in Mandel's Paris apartment. That painting was Portrait of a Young Seated Woman by Thomas Couture. Portrait of a Young Seated Woman, Portrait de jeune femme assise in French, was painted somewhere between 1850 and 1855 by Thomas Couture, a French history painter and teacher. Mandel's apartment was targeted early by German art looting organizations. Portrait of a Young Seated Woman was a victim of the looting, but thankfully was not destroyed as many other paintings were. Thomas Couture was born in Senlis-Oise, France. At the age of 11, his family moved to Paris, where he went on to study at industrial art schools École des Arts et Maîtrise and École des Beaux-Arts. In 1840, he began to show his paintings at the Paris Salon. Most of his works included historical and genre pictures. His most established work, The Romans of Decadence, won several medals and is now displayed in the Louvre. After his success, he opened his own art school in challenge of the ones he had studied at and began to produce some of the best historical painters. He trained many other famous painters of the time, such as Edouard Manet and Henri Fantin-Latour. Much of his work was met with harsh criticism, and most of his paintings were left unfinished when he died in 1879. Because most of his paintings were not finished, Portrait of a Young Seated Woman is especially valuable. It was identified as Mandel's 2 years ago when experts found a small hole on the seated woman's torso. In October of 2017, Provenance researchers identified a tiny repaired hole on the painting. Mandel's lover reported the stolen art after the war and noted the small hole that led experts to Mandel. Monika Grütters, the German Federal Commissioner for Culture and the Media, stated shortly after the painting was identified, "The fact that the researchers have been able, through their meticulous and unstinting work, to identify the painting by Thomas Couture as Nazi-looted art demonstrates once again how important it is not to let up in our efforts in the field of provenance research. I hope very much to see this work returned promptly to the descendants of the original owner. We owe it to the people who were persecuted by the National Socialists, deprived of their property and their rights, and in many cases murdered, to leave no stone unturned in the investigating and clarifying the Nazi looting of art. It is and remains our moral obligation in cases of artwork seized by the Nazis to find fair and just solutions. 75 years after Georges Mandel was killed in the country he fought so hard to protect, his belongings have gained restitution. That tiny hole, invisible to the naked eye, brought his precious painting back into his bloodline. Portrait of a Young Seated Woman was found in 2012 in the Gurlitt Art Trove, an enormous collection of Nazi-looted art in the Munich apartment of Cornelius Gurlitt. Gurlitt, who died in 2014, was the grandson and great-nephew of two other Cornelius Gurlitts, one of which was an art historian and the other a composer. He inherited the sizable collection of art from his father, Hildebrand Gurlitt, who was an art dealer commissioned by Nazis. His collection contained over 1,500 works of stolen art. In 2012, German tax authorities confiscated the collection, but in 2014, the collection was to be returned to Gurlitt. He never saw the return in his lifetime, but recognized while he was still alive that items that were determined as looted should be returned to their rightful owners. Upon his death, he left the entirety of his collection to the Museum of Fine Arts in Bern, Switzerland. The museum accepted all items in the collection except those of suspect provenance, which were left to German investigation. Portrait of a Young Seated Woman is one of those pieces subjected to provenance research and one of the first to be returned to the rightful owner. On July 30th of this year, the German cultural minister, Monika Grütters, officially returned Portrait of a Young Seated Woman to its rightful heirs. She said, "This case again reminds us that we should never stop our wholehearted work in investigating the Nazis' looting of art, for which Germany is responsible." In a ceremony held at Berlin's Gropius Bau Museum, the minister emphasized Germany's commitment to restitution. Franz Rainer Wolfgang Joachim Kleinertz, Mandel's son-in-law, and Maria de las Mercedes Estrada, Mandel's granddaughter, were overjoyed to be receiving the painting. Grütters described the return of the painting to Mandel's heirs, a moving conclusion to the exhibition of the Gurlitt Trove. The painting was the fifth work from the Gurlitt collection to be returned to its legitimate owner, the sixth to have been officially identified as stolen by Nazis. The Gurlitt Provenance Research is responsible for the restitution, with its goal of establishing history of paintings found in the trove and returned Nazi-looted art. Portrait of a Seated Young Woman is emblematic of the importance of art restitution as we attempt to right the wrongs of history and return unlawfully taken art to their rightful owners. The history of Nazi-looted art is long and terrible. Precious artwork was destroyed and ripped from its owners. As the fictional George Stokes said in the Monuments Men movie, "You can wipe out a generation of people, you can burn their homes to the ground, and somehow they'll still come back. But if you destroy their achievements and their history, then it's like they never existed. Just ash floating. That's what Hitler wants, and it's the one thing we simply can't allow." Millions of people died in the war, and Hitler tried to take a history that was not his to take by stealing art and valuable items. Not only were lives destroyed, but so was culture. The masterpieces destroyed during that time will never be recreated. The lives of Europeans before World War II were never again the same. People lost friends, family, neighbors, art, artifacts, and items precious both in monetary and emotional value. So much atrocity was committed, and it is our responsibility today to make up for the terrors of the past. The wrongs of history must be and can be righted today. Portrait of a Young Seated Woman was unlawfully taken from Georges Mandel over 70 years ago and has now been returned only a few months ago. So many pieces of art have been found so recently, and it is experts' job to find the rightful owners. There is a moral obligation to the legal owners of art to return it. The knowledge and technology art historians have today, it is much easier to find where art should go. Although it may be a long and hard road to art restitution, we owe it to the people that were so devastatingly wrong during World War II to make things right.